Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on May 14th, 2023, at approximately 4:32 p.m. PST. Now, I returned to this world for one primary purpose, and that is to remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Now, I bill myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the exact same tools I personally use to run my own day to day life. And the philosophies that I talk about are the ones I personally live by. So, do understand when we're discussing things here, there is no research involved. This is just the way I've come to understand things. And that can be complicated in and of itself. Now, before I get into things, let me just see if I can get something working here. It's been a bit of a hectic day, which is quite normal for me. I'm gonna try and call up the other screen so I can actually see, which is always fun. There we go. Boy, that came up in a hurry. Now, right off the bat, we have Henry here in with the gold. I am Pam. How you doing? You've come in with the silver. I cut this one, to say the least, a little tight, but, that's the way my life goes on occasion. So I do hope your guys' day has been going well. I got to look at things, and it was like, okay, how do we make this world a better one? Thank you so much there, Henry. I figured I'd treat myself in a manner of speaking. You know, I gotta say, there's a lot of people I haven't responded to any of it yet. Today's been a little preoccupied, if you will. Emmy, how you doing? You're in with the bronze. But I must say thank you for all the happy birthday wishes. Yesterday was a little hectic, but went really well. Very expensive, but I got kind of a left-handed compliment out of my own son, right? Because I decided I was upgrading. Now, yeah, the reality of it is, it's still t-shirts. Sorry, this is me. I did consider going when I was out. I picked up my youngest son's grad suit. And I did honestly consider about getting a blazer, and I thought about it, for myself. And I thought, I barely leave the house aside from to go out to a restaurant. Is there a real necessity to get a blazer? Because I sure as heck am not getting a tie. You know, and Joe, we are in with honorable mention here. Thank you so much, there, Kimberly. I mean, I did consider the idea of getting a blazer. I'm not going back into a suit. I figure if somebody wants me in a suit, they can wait till I die and then deal with it. You know, but when I said I got kind of a left-handed compliment from my son, I'm going to be removing all of this. Okay, all the beard, the mustache, the sideburns are staying. That's just the way that's going to be. But the left-handed compliment went this way. My son turns around, he looks at me because I told him I was looking at removing the beard. Because in the heat, it gets uncomfortable for me. And he goes, "But Dad," he says, "I don't like the way you look without the beard." And I'm thinking, well, okay, you know, I kind of looked at this and went, well, I appreciate that, but the beard's still going to go. Oh, I'm not removing. No, the sideburns are staying. Mutton chops, lamb chops, whatever you want to call them. I'm not having these removed. Just from here to here. Okay. I've already told my other half, and of course, she is of the opinion that she doesn't like a beard anyway, which works out well, because it sort of comes and goes depending on how I look at how things are going on the day. So from that end, I am keeping the sideburns. I think a lot of that is still in deference to my father. He had them until the last week of his life. Right. I never. Sorry about that. I don't recall seeing him without them until the last week of his life. The birthday it went well. I did go out for dinner, spent way too much money on things, but I did get done what I did desire to do. Made a couple of choices. I'll be getting rid of a few things shortly. A few things that you'll never see because I'm not taking it into the living room. But while I was doing that, a couple of days ago, I went out for lunch and jumping Jiminy. Yeah, in case you hadn't noticed, tired today. But I think that might have part to do with yesterday. But in any event, I went out and over the course of an hour, I wrote the backbone to another book. And yes, I've got all the pictures now. I'll be moving them in today. As a matter of fact, where is my sheet? Well, of course I wouldn't have it here. So I guess we'll do this the other way. Pardon me. No, I figured it's a question of taking a look at where my life is standing and going, it's time to get rid of the stuff that is essentially in the way. The things that I'm not actually requiring. So, what I've got here, let's see. Today is the 14th, so that's okay. We go with 1530 to 1600. Is there we go. Now, here's the neat part about it. Boy, my brain is very much on hold here. Okay, I'm going to have to excuse myself for just half a minute. I'll be right back. I think this is just plain normal in these days. I don't have things quite as organized as I'd like. Don't need that. Nope. Yeah, this is the way notes go for me on occasion. Have to deal with that and that. These are just the different notes and what have you that I've got to get through when I get done the live stream today. Okay, anyway, guys. Try and walk out of the room, and all of a sudden, what we got? Adam, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Hopefully the day has been going well for you. Oh, yeah, Henry, where it comes to elementals, now it depends entirely on the elemental. Okay, but as I'm sure you can imagine, well, let's start off with the cordon. Okay, the cordon they are what we call much like, okay, let me think if I can put this right. If you take a look at an insect, okay, it starts off as an insect, as a larva, evolves into other stages as it goes. Well, the cordon is the baseline and the baseline rebirth of a caboran. Okay, a cordon, like if we take a look at the cordon, is the earth elemental. Now, a caboran is a planet. So what we have here is explosive reproduction in a sense. When you take a look at a planet foreign, when they have a volcanic eruption, okay, little bits and pieces get catapulted all over the place, as you've seen with eruptions. Nathan, how we doing? Glad you could join us. You know, when we have a volcanic eruption, pieces go all over the place. We look at them as rocks. Okay, in the what is it called? Igneous, I believe. I may have the name wrong, but volcanic rocks anyway get catapulted out of the inner side of the earth, out of the inside. Okay, you end up with all these rocks that come out. A lot end up just on the ground, but you've got all this dust and debris that gets catapulted into the upper atmosphere. It's in the upper atmosphere where it hangs around for a while. Ultimately, it really does. Okay, because what happens is the dust gets tossed up into the atmosphere, and when a Caboran starts to grow, when a Corydon starts to evolve, okay, some of them will get to a certain point and fall back to Earth. Okay, and they will take root here, take up home on the Caboran. They are still Corydon. Some will gather a little bit of extra material while they're up there, kind of like cell division. End up eventually, they sit way up in the upper atmosphere. We get another astronomical phenomenon. A comet cuts through and skips off the surface of the Earth. Not the surface of the Earth, but the surface of the atmospheric envelope. The speed of that transition pulls some of the Corydon dust into outer space. From there, it starts to collect, it starts to coalesce. Okay, I can't tell you exactly when the Corydon takes on a life of its own, but in time, what will happen is it will gain a little bit more mass and eventually fall back to ground, quite often on different planets. Okay, now you have a new Corydon that is evolved on another planet. This can happen either in this universe or in the next, because some of them will be pulled into a black hole or into a wormhole. The ones going into a black hole, by the way, don't survive. The ones going into a black hole or into a wormhole get catapulted elsewhere, and the cycle continues. Okay, but some of them don't land. They just continue to grow. They continue to evolve, and eventually you have a Caboran when they mature to the point of actually having a full life cycle of their own. Okay, and then the process repeats itself. Now, that's the Caboran. Okay, and this is something that it's one of the additions that has to be dealt with where it comes to the second printing of Races of the Worlds. Okay. And again, I've got my note on my pad here, so that I can make sure I can keep track of what I gotta get done. Because of course, when I get finished today, I've got a whole pile of things that I've got to get dealt with. Okay, this is just one of them. Now, what is that? That is May. Oh, I am happy to say, finally, okay, like I've been plateaued. Essentially, the answer is yes, Henry. Okay, the Corydon are living rock, living stone. Now, do understand there are many, many, many different species of elementals. Okay, all of them have variations on their own evolutionary process, not the least of which, okay, The cordon is just the earth elemental. Your three primary species are your earth, the earth, the water, and the fire. Okay. And again, each of these, it's not a question of every stone that you see is living. It's kind of like seeing every hair on somebody's body is not necessarily alive. Okay, there are many people, like some of this hair is already dead. Okay, a lot of it got cut off the other day. But I finally decided I was going to remove it and bring things back to normal. But the cordon, okay, thank you so much, football. Thanks for joining us. I'm glad you can make it. But here's the biggest difference between the way I see the elemental side of things and the way many of what you guys call the pagans see it. Okay, most pagan religions and belief structures believe in 4 elements. Technically 5, but they believe in earth, air, fire, water, and some of the more advanced ones or more open ones, if you will, also see spirit as an element. Okay, spirit being life itself. Now, I work with technically 3. Depending on who you talk to, I can go with the 4th one. The one that I've eliminated because of the reactionary capacity of it. Earth or air elementals and water elementals, they are all water elementals. Or air elementals and water elementals are the same element. Just look at their behavioral pattern. Okay. Yes, and Henry, with what you were describing, I absolutely agree with you. You know, oh, in all fairness, Joe, I will be covering Ouija in more detail. Let me just look. I've got it already written down on Tuesday. But this said, this is open topic, which means there are certain, some topics I won't deal with. Okay, and I'll let you know. But Ouija, I don't have a problem. Okay. Thank you so much for that football. Ouija boards in cemeteries. If you know how to use a Ouija board, they're not a big problem. If you don't, and this is one of the things that we're going to go into on Tuesday. Okay, as in, well, today's Sunday, so we're looking at, I think, the 16th. Yeah, the 16th. Okay. Oh, I was supposed to put that out today, wasn't I? Okay, so I will get that out. Actually, I'll probably do it while I'm online here. That's actually not a bad idea. Now, Ouija boards, there are some do's and don'ts. Okay. Is it okay to use a Ouija board in a cemetery? Certainly. But do understand that's kind of like using a cell phone with additional apps to it in the middle of a crowded bar. Cemeteries are not a quiet place to get a quiet conversation. Okay. A cemetery is going to be active. So if you're using a Ouija board, be absolutely certain of 2 critical factors. One is you never, ever forget your manners. Meaning, when you open the door, when you start using it, thank your prospective communicators for their time and energy. Absolutely. Do greet them politely, greet them with respect, and you thank them for their time before you ever get into asking anything. Okay. Now, the second aspect of that is when you go to close the session off. Okay. Do not ever forget to say farewell, good night, goodbye, whatever you choose to use as a term. Okay. I personally recommend farewell. Okay. And there's a reason for that. But never ever just walk away from the board and leave it open. Okay. This is akin to walking away from a barn, leaving the doors open, and hoping all the horses stay inside. They're not going to. Okay, now I will tell you, leaving the door open, okay, is not an open portal for everything coming through the door. And the thing is, there's a big difference between a Ouija board and a psychomantium. Okay, but do the spirits, do the deceased take offense to somebody using a Ouija board in the graveyard? No. I would recommend staying out of the grave site. Okay. Like, let us not forget, the people that are there have been placed there with the belief that they are protected. And I mean with the belief by the people left behind. Okay. Remember, karmic law is very simple. Energy out, energy in. Meaning, if you desire to be treated with respect by the deceased, treat them with respect as well. Okay. And yes, there are things that you can do to really screw things up in a hurry. Football, I have taken note of the question of what's a vampire safe house, and we will get to that. Okay. I'm marking it down. I figure this will work. Yeah, at least it'll work better than the other way. So yes, I have made a note to make sure that if I get sidetracked too far, I'll come back to it. But in a cemetery, okay, understand, if you just open the door and say, I desire to talk, okay, you may run into an interesting problem. Now, I wonder if I've got that here. This is here. Yep. Now, I certainly don't expect you guys to be able to see that, but you can see it sort of. Okay. No, I'm not expecting you to actually be able to read that, but that is a homemade Ouija board. Okay, or more to the point, it's a template for one. Okay. Yes, I do work with them. This one I just have to get the right size wood for and then burn it in properly. But you'll notice now I don't think I've got one. I'll show you one. If I've got it, I'll bring it for Tuesday. No, we're not going to start using it. Okay. But yeah. Yeah, Ouija boards are not illegal, but I will tell you, I'm a firm believer that whoever decided to turn a Ouija board into a toy is absolutely or was absolutely out of their mind. Okay. It'd be kind of like turning nitroglycerin into a party favor. Okay. Way, way, way too many problems. Okay. And way too many complications to deal with. Now, I've seen the Ouija boards open doors that have let very agitated spirits through. Oh, that's the funny thing, Henry. The Ouija board, and somebody else can do the research for it, although it is a curious thought. Let us just see something here. What I'm doing is um, I'm just literally punching into the internet something I couldn't do a few years ago. What I've done is on the internet, I've simply done, okay. Yeah, I get a kick out of this. What I asked was when what when was a Ouija board first made? Now, according to this, the first thing, where are we? The first response was in 1890. It was created for supernatural communication. It was also the focus of several lawsuits. Okay. But here's the thing. Yeah, the history, I get a kick out of this. See, I get a kick out of this because they talk about it being first built in the 1890s, which I won't argue. Maybe it was. Okay. But the communication with the afterlife was done way before the 1890s. Okay. And let's face it, in the 1890s, like who was it here? Go back up there. Crystal J, how you doing? Glad you could join us. And there we have the Mac Geek coming in as well. Henry was saying that technically the Ouija board is a copyright owned by Hasbro. Funny thing is, Hasbro wasn't around in 1890, which is apparently, according to the internet, when the Ouija board was first created. Okay, so with that in mind, okay, and there we have I Am Pam trying to sneak in without a theater. Or did you get in here earlier? You did so. My apologies, and I may have screwed things up there. Just looking back up here, not top chat, we should have live. Okay, go all the way to the top. Henry. Oh, I Am Pam came in with the sub. We already saw that. Okay. You were I Am Pam. My apologies. My memory's really, really good and about that long. But when we take a look at it, okay, people have been communicating with the deceased since time almost immemorial. Now, I can't give you a date when it started, but I will tell you it was quite common practice in ancient Egypt. It was quite common practice back in Arimathea. Okay, it was absolutely normal during the Lemurian Empire. Okay. So, I mean, this is something that's been going on for a very, very long time. Okay. Now, I'll come back to that in a little bit if that's where things go. But I do want to make sure I get to this question by Football. Now, Football asked, what is a vampire safe house? Basically, it's a place where Sangina where the Sangina are able to sleep quietly without fear of being disturbed. And yes, the rumors that there are what people call thralls, okay, are real, except for okay, except for they are not controlled by the Sangina, by the vampires, by the shadow walkers. Okay, they got along with them, and they made for their own reasons agreements. Yes, we'll watch over you. Okay, but one of the standard trade-offs was, regardless of how hungry you are, do not go after me or my family. Okay, now this is when we're talking about the people who watched over them. Okay, the caretakers, the butlers, security crew, that sort of thing. But a safe house is literally what it sounds like. It is a place that is usually owned by one of the people that are willing to keep an eye on them. Usually, it's got an easy way to get into it. Okay. And nobody's allowed in that isn't known. Okay. So, are they real? The answer is yes. But and there are a few things that are very misunderstood about the Shadow Walkers, about the Sangina. Okay. And one of the biggest things is, no, they do not have, like, the people that, when people talk about, oh, they're thralls, and they're controlled by the Shadow Walkers, no, they aren't. Not on the whole. Any more then people are controlled by the marketing moguls or by the governments around the world. Okay, it's just Sangina do have a staggering capacity for mesmerization. In other words, for convincing somebody and really drawing them to really focus on helping them, sometimes to an extreme level. Okay. Now Nathan's asked, he goes, Lemuria was an empire. Lemuria had over 10 billion people on this planet, right here on what you call Earth. They had over 10 billion people. Okay. And we are talking about a global empire where we were absolutely connected, mentally speaking, not a hive mind. But if you desire to talk to somebody in what is now called Australia, okay, as in on the other side of the world, all you had to do was think, and you were connected. Okay, we just found that the energy levels that we produced by remaining connected was so much higher than the rest. Joe's just saying, I used to go fool around in cemeteries late at night with two old buddies of mine. I don't hang around with them anymore. But back then we talked to a lot of spirits. Oh yeah, and it's phenomenal. And from my standpoint, I don't fear the cemetery. Something about I don't fear a whole lot. I mean, don't get me wrong, I am not the bravest person on the planet. I think half the time my elevator doesn't go all the way to the attic. But the Lemurian Empire was a massive empire. Okay, and this is why when people say we're running out of land, no, you're really not. What you are running into a problem with is something that the Lemurians cured a long time before. Okay, mankind is so caught up in greed that it is destroying itself. Okay, let's see. Starflower, how you doing? Glad you could join us. And as you can tell, this is why I call this an open topic, an open forum. Now, we've got a couple of things to look at. Like Starflower has just asked, let's see, read that properly. What really happened to Lemuria and Atlantis? Is Lemuria and Atlantis the same city? Well, we'll start with the obvious to me. Okay, now do understand, I remember walking the halls of Lemuria and walking the halls of Atlantis. They were absolutely, two completely different civilizations. Okay, they were not connected except in as much as when Lemuria collapsed, a few of the survivors did end up connecting with the Atlanteans when they got here. Okay, but we're talking about a race of people that were long gone by the time the Atlanteans got here, on the whole. Yeah, Joe's going, back then when I was playing around in the cemeteries, back then I wasn't as open-minded as I am now. And yet, back then you were quite willing to sit down and play with a Ouija board in the middle of the cemetery, which I think is great. Okay. And do understand, I do not approve in any issue, in any way of looking at it, of vandalizing anything, including cemeteries. Okay. Now, I do get a kick out of it for the people that don't know this. You vandalize a cemetery, yeah, you'll get in trouble by the police. If you get caught, you'll get in trouble. Okay. But it ain't nothing compared to what you'll go through at the hands of the spirits. Now, number one, let's take a look at Lemuria. Okay, Lemuria, we had at that point, we were completely mentally connected. and thereby that's where we developed the real link, the real understanding of the neural net. There was no greed, there was no jealousy, and there was a little bit of fear, but there was no famine. There was no shortage of land. Okay, what we had was a world that was so peaceful that, from your guys' standpoint, it's almost inconceivable. Absolutely, Crystal. Crystal J, you could not be any more correct. I don't personally feel taking, and like in Crystal just going. You also should not take sand, rocks, money, or anything left in a cemetery. Okay, absolutely, you should not, because it is still theft. Okay, and karmic law is very simple: energy out, energy in. Okay, do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Meaning, if you go and steal from the side of the grave, you're stealing from whoever is inside it. At the very best, you're stealing from somebody that left it there with the intention of the energy of it getting to the person left behind. Now, the one exception to moving that stuff, okay, is the caretaker of the cemetery. Now, I don't know what they do with the stuff, but after a period, and I'm sure there's a certain amount of time that's involved, but, and I should look into that someday if I ever think about it long enough, but the caretakers of the cemetery do periodically have to pick up the stuff and remove it. Okay. Otherwise, you would have a cemetery that, never mind the people laying there, you would have it looking like a dump. Okay, because people leave some of the most bizarre things behind. Bizarre from my standpoint. Understanding the people that passed away aren't taking the material stuff with them, but it is literally, in this case, the thought that counts. I've seen where people have left, and like has been said, money, flowers, foodstuffs. I actually even saw one case in one of my sojourns into a cemetery. Somebody had left a handmade baby blanket on the cemetery, on the gravestone. Okay, now this is done in deference to the person land that was left there. But the caretakers of the actual cemetery do periodically go and collect up stuff. I honestly don't have any idea what they do with it. Okay, but there are people that will go in and just randomly they will clean off, as in take a bucket of water with them, and they will wipe down a tombstone. Okay, there is nothing wrong with cleaning the dirt off of a tombstone, but do not take the stuff that has been put there. I mean, certainly if you're in the process of washing it, absolutely pick the stuff up and move it, but put it back. Okay, this is just simply the way it should be. Now, with the Lemurian Empire, we had turned around and everything, if you desired an apple, you just simply thought about it, and all of a sudden you got an apple in the palm of your hand. Okay, now you've got an apple, you created food. We didn't have massive farms, okay, because we didn't require them. But we got to a point where it was so easy to do things. And of course, because we were mentally connected, football, football is just saying dirt was mysteriously put in my grandmother's vase at her gravesite. That could well have been one of the spirits doing it. Now I got to ask you, and with all due respect, was your grandmother really, really into flowers or caring for a flower bed, that sort of thing? You know, I would be inclined to say, from what I'm picking up, she was likely very much into the idea of plants. Now, it is very likely, and I've seen this done, it's very likely that your grandmother was the one that put the dirt in the vase. Because let's face it, from your grandmother's standpoint, you've got a vase. It's supposed to have dirt in it to have a plant in it. Okay. Yeah, Joe just said, I've personally seen the cemetery people cover up a casket immediately after funeral. Okay. And that does happen. Because you got to remember, the other little drawback with humans is some humans do go through the graveyard. They will cut through it. And the thing with covering up the site is simply to avoid somebody doing something silly and tripping and falling into a gravesite. Okay, landing on top of a coffin. And worst case scenario, dying right there. This is a bad thing. But it is when we look at and yeah, we're going to bounce all over the place. This much is clear. We reached a point in Lemuria. We reached a point where we were bored. It was way too easy to start to just think about something. So we went back to the to the real primitive artwork. Okay, now I showed you this the other day. I just wasn't certain why I did. Okay. When I'm talking primitive art, okay, we take a log, right, and just using whatever we could. At that point, it was sharp stone, okay, because that's all we had to peel a face into it. Okay, and eventually it evolved into much better artwork. I mean, I am no artist. Okay, but this is how it started with just a simple peeling. And it would be done, it wouldn't be cut. Okay, you take a deadfall and you'd carve a face into it, or you'd carve a sigil into it, a name, whatever, something to just add your touch to it. But this was never done on a live plant. Okay, this would be done on a log. But the reason I say there was no jealousy, yeah, it doesn't look like me much, I don't think personally, but I don't think that was supposed to be a self portrait. But the reason I say there was no jealousy is you take a look at it, and we would start carving and then get better as we went along. But if somebody else came along and looked at it and went, hey, how did you manage to do that? As natural born teachers, Lemurians would share their knowledge, not because they were worrying, they didn't go, oh, I want to get paid for it. It was just, this is what I created, this is what I'm proud of, and this is how I did it. Okay. So you always showed somebody else and hoped they could do a better job. Sometimes what would happen is, one person would do this. Next person would come along, learn this technique, and they would turn around and improve on it. Now, the neat little part of it, okay, was it just continued to evolve. Today we've got phenomenal wood carvers. Okay. Now we are talking 50,000 years later, so realistically they should be better. Okay. But it was something like this, or just simply stacking stones in a pattern. Okay. I don't think I've got it here. That should be it. Yep. Okay. Now something like this, in my case, this was actually done with a Ouija, or with a there's not yet. This particular sign was actually done with this. And I showed you this the other day. This magnifying lens, okay, out in broad daylight, in a high sun, is what I use to do this. But way back when we started, we didn't have glass. Okay, we didn't have crystal to work with. Okay, because when we started in on the art, it was a question of going back to the very old way, the very primitive ways of doing it. But the long and the short of it, where are we? Yes, we will absolutely get to that, Henry, and let me just make a note of that. Henry's just asking about the other elementals, so we will get back to them. That's the easy part. Now, when we got to that point that we were trying new things, but we were getting more into the basic artwork. Okay, we were still totally mentally connected, and therefore we managed to stay really solidly on one page. Lily Pond, how you doing? Glad you could join us. We reached a point where, I mean, it was way too easy because remember, one person would go, I want to live here. And we really did work on a first come, first serve, because we still liked having shelter. So we go, okay, I desire a home and I'm going to build it right here. Well, the neat part about it was if somebody else came along and wanted to build a home in that same site, okay, there was no argument of, I get the main floor. Okay, you can't, one person came up with it. The second person comes along and goes, I like the area. I'm going to set my house right on top of yours. And because there was no jealousy, how you doing, Dogface? Because there was no jealousy, you ended up with mentally built, okay, just mentally created one building, one room on top of the next, okay, and you just stacked them. We had skyscrapers that were in excess of 200 stories tall, built straight on mental cohesion, meaning somebody came up with the idea, made it a solid picture, a solid image, and then somebody else would build it and would take a look at that. And now everybody that sees it is adding their energy to the solidification of it. So we ended up 200 stories and then some. Okay, totally structurally solid. There was no complication there. Okay, there was no rush to it, none of it. Aussie Gold, how you doing? Glad you joined us. We could go with Viola with the standard thing, but let's just settle for the idea of hopefully your day has gone well. Now, somewhere along the way, and we never did figure out who, okay, somebody, whether it was a male, a female, a child, we don't know. But Lemurian somewhere in there, all of a sudden came up with this brilliant idea. They all of a sudden turned around and went, well, what would happen if we all stopped our physical heart at the same time? Now, we hadn't done this. Okay, and this was where short-sightedness created a cataclysm. Okay, because all of a sudden this thought went around the world, and we're like, hey, why not? And bear in mind, Lemurians also had floating cities, again, built exactly the same way. So, this thought came through the entire civilization, and it was like, never thought of it before, but we're bored. Let's give it a shot, see what happens. And here's the problem. Half of the people, we're talking 5 billion people plus, their hearts stopped right now. Okay, we all stopped our hearts, but 5 billion, half the population, could not get their heart started again. Now, when you're building a civilization on mental cohesion, okay, as in everybody thinks about it, and it's literally what you guys have have coined the term, and I don't know about you guys specifically, okay, have coined the term thought forms. Okay, we had it down to a fine art. So what ended up happening was when these 5 billion dropped dead and they couldn't get their heart started, well, the baseline thought of that particular form ceased to exist. Okay, now picture what happens. You've got a 200-story building. Take out the middle 50 stories. Okay, and they just vanish. What's going to happen to the 100, the 75 stories above? Okay, all of a sudden you got 50 stories that are just gone, and the 75 that are resting on top of that 50 plummet 50 stories. By the way, that also means they're plummeting by approximately 500 feet, 5 to 600 feet. They're just going to drop. Okay, taking these 75 stories, dropping them in one block onto the 75 below. Then you've got the explosion, the shock wave. Now, you guys have seen demolitions happen. Okay, you've seen demolition things filmed, and you take that kind of disaster, but let's amplify that, because you've got 500 million people. Well, you got 5 billion people all of a sudden gone. So all of a sudden these cities are in absolute ruin. Now, modern science has already looked into how long it takes Mother Nature to step in. Now, bear in mind, everything we did was mentally organized. Okay, it wasn't a question of let's understand the human body or let's understand the way that our bodies work. It was just, oh look, I've got a broken hand. Well, that doesn't work for me, so I'm just going to heal it. Okay, but when the 5 billion dropped, we were afraid to mentally communicate with each other. So now you've got, well, we start with the 5 billion. You're down to half right off the bat. Now, without even trying to do any complicated math, you've got the side effect of it, because you got to remember, now we have 5 billion people that are dead. Okay, and nature moving in. So we had no way of protecting ourselves against wild animals, okay, or against disease or anything like this. But we were afraid to draw on each other. So we have 5 billion people in a civilization that is in complete global ruin. Okay, now you've seen pictures either in real life or in movies, hopefully more in movies than real life, of what a war zone looks like. Well, understand, this is nothing compared to what we saw. Okay, that doesn't make what if people have gone through here any less devastating to them. But we're talking 5 billion people around the world where civilization just ceased to exist. Okay, now we've got Mother Nature coming in. Okay, you've got disease running rampant and no way of dealing with it. Well, you take another 50% of those people are within a couple of months, we're down from 5 billion to roughly 2, maybe 2.5 billion people. Okay, and that's just from the immediate shock of the end of the civilization. Okay, now as you've seen, if you've watched any documentaries, for nature to come in and reclaim an area takes about a week. Okay, so all of a sudden nature goes into overdrive, and you've got disease being spread around. Okay, as decay happens. And I'll tell you, the reek was something phenomenal, not in a good way. So we went from that over the course of about a year. We went from, and it's only a rough guesstimation because it seemed like a lot longer at the time anyway. Okay, we went from 10 billion people to a rough estimated, looking back over it, a roughly estimated 10,000. Okay. And they were scattered around the world. Because remember, this whole idea of let's connect mentally, that wiped out civilization. So there were a few of us left that still had the gift, but were very reluctant to use it. So we relied on traveling around until we finally stumbled across each other. In the process of this taking place, mankind was evolving. Okay. So you've got Gigantopithecus, aka Sasquatch, okay, roaming around, still living on nature. You've got Cro-Magnon, which was slightly more evolved. You've got Cro-Magnon, and you've got the Lemurians. Well, the Lemurians, as things went on, ended up slowly merging with, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes quite by accident, or more to the point, quite forcibly. They ended up joining other communities. And yes, the Aztecs and the Mayans did have Lemurians connected to them. Okay, now the Lemurians did not want control of the communities. Okay, some of them ended up in leadership positions because they actually knew more. Okay, but there was a very definitive shift in power. Okay, so Lemurians faded into the background. Okay, now that is why Lemuria doesn't have, and why you're not finding any records of the Lemurian Empire. Okay, because there's one other thing you got to remember. When that happened, okay, if there was a natural disaster coming, Lemurians had the capacity to alter the flow of matter. In other words, oh, we're on the beach and we see a tsunami coming in. Let's calm the water. Okay, let's calm the water and bring it down to a smoother run. All of a sudden, you're not dealing with that kind of devastation either. Now, in many parts of the world, well, if you go into what now is called South America, okay, the landmass that became that, the Lemurians connected with some of the Aztecs, the Mayans. They connected with the Sea Elves. When we go over into England, you're looking at connections. You're looking at connections being made with what people would come to call the ancient Druids. Okay, so this is where the Lemurian Empire just scattered to the four winds. Now there are a few people that are still alive, that are alive today, that have walked the halls of Lemuria. Okay, and yes, in case you hadn't pieced it together, I do remember being there. Well, it depends on your definition of truth there, Ozzy. Yeah, I was just going to get to that anyway. Where it comes to now, that is the Lemurian Empire. The Atlantean Empire was a whole different ballgame. Okay, now did it exist? Certainly. Did it sink into the ocean? No. Okay, and there are other people that remember Atlantis that have corroborated this with me. Okay, but again, don't just take my word for things. Do your own research. But no, I'm not going to go grab that. But if you take a look, that won't work. That will though. I'm just going to use this to show you to say picture the Atlantean city, the city of Atlantis. Okay. Let me just see if I've got the note down here properly. Not that one. We shrink this. Just minimizing a few things so I can actually find what I'm looking for. Oh, sure, I gotta minimize everything. Where are we? Races there. Nope. Should be right there. Now let's get this up so I can see who I'm talking to here. Not exactly what I was aiming for. Okay. Now, Just looking down here, that's hybridization. I'm just looking at the I'm just looking at book 2. Okay, Races of the Worlds, Volume 2. Arborean, Archon. They are not in here in book 2. I wonder if that means. Oh, that probably means I put them in book 1. Might have been an idea to look that up, eh? What do you think? Race of the World's Body. Must be in the first one. Go way back up here, too. Yeah, I'm looking for an answer to the question you're seeking. Okay, well, obviously that's not going to work well. Looks like I'm printing. That is not what I was hoping for. Yes, I'm trying to find something you asked about, and this is why I don't do this on the whole. I opened the wrong one first, that's why. AT, yep. There we are. All the way down back. There we go. That's what I just want to make sure that I had the right thing. When the Atlanteans arrived, they came in on a generation ship. Okay. And the thing was, they showed up on a generation ship, a generation starship. Okay. But they didn't, when they landed, their ship was called the Atlantia. And when they met the locals, they finally made verbal contact with them. The locals said, well, where are you from? Well, because there was all kinds of communication complications, the people of Atlantis, they turned around and what they said was, we come from the Atlantia. They were referring to the ship they came in on. The locals thought they were talking about another city. So they called it Atlantia, the Atlanteans. Because, well, let's face it, ship was called the Atlantia, so they were Atlanteans. It was that simple. But the Atlanteans were so far advanced above the locals that they made a flat-out decision: we are not turning over weaponry, even in defense of the people. They would step in and help where they could, but they were not going to turn over the knowledge on how to make these weapons, on how to make these defensive energy patterns, or even how to build the power systems. They just said, we're not doing it. Okay. While the locals were greedy, and they pushed and pushed, and they really wanted it. And some of the Atlanteans agreed with the locals that they should share the information. So what ended up happening is some of the Atlanteans worked with the locals in order to sabotage, in order to force the artifacts out. Okay. Now here's where it gets a little screwy. Okay. You've got the city of Atlantis. Okay, and all the spires that were talked about, all the incredible architecture and what have you, was very real. Okay, it was powered by a form of energy way beyond the locals. Okay, way beyond them. But in the bowels of the Atlantia was the engine room. And there was one scientist that was literally working on a new form of energy, because they figured okay, we've got a problem. These people are getting more and more volatile and more demanding of this technology they have no idea how to work with. Picture, if you will, if mankind all of a sudden had free energy, as in energy you guys didn't have to work to understand. Okay, and it just provided everything. So the Atlanteans turned around. That was not right. The Atlanteans turned around and said, we're not doing it. So they started prepping for departure. But remember, understand, when the Atlanteans got here, their ship had been damaged. That's why they landed to start with. So they were here for quite a number of years and working around the clock to solve the problem. One of the scientists in the basement had figured out a way they thought would work. Now I happen to have been friends with that individual. So when I wasn't up on in the control room, okay, because at the time I was one of the rocket scientists that ran the whole power system. But when I had time, I'd go down and talk to this chap down in the research section. And he was working on an energy pattern on an energy system that would enable us to not only seal the dome so we could get back off the planet and return home, but it would enable us to actually get the engine running properly. So, and this is why I brought this out. Okay, now picture, if you will, really tall spires, and we're talking, 50, 75 stories. So you're looking at, 500, 500, 700 feet tall with walkways between them. Now, the Atlanteans already had the energy to make sure that the crosswinds at that time would not catapult somebody off the parapets, just by the air. So we'd already balanced that out and put a null field in there. But just as the power system down and below was being put together, there was an attempt at forcibly extricating the technology. Okay, and some of the Atlanteans turned around, some of the ones that agreed with the locals, and were trying to help with getting the information to them. Okay, they worked together and they sabotaged the equipment because obviously the scientists working on the machine couldn't be there 24/7. So it got sabotaged. And here's where it got screwy. When it happened, okay, and considering where the explosion happened, you've got the engine back here. Okay, the transfer casing. But up here where the control switches were, okay, somebody sabotaged this. No, and we missed it. Absolutely. But when the power system was turned on, it exploded. Okay, but at the time it exploded, it ignited the engines. So what happened was you end up with the ship all of a sudden being launched like this and then catapulted into orbit. Now picture, if you will, people walking along on the walkways, they're enjoying the view, and all of a sudden the ship goes boom and then launches. All the people up on the walkways get dropped off. Some of them landed in the water, some of them survived. Now there is a location where this particular ship was in the Bimini Islands. Okay, but when the ship tilted and left, okay, the person that had built the power system was caught right in the heart of the blast. He was gone like that. Now, the only reason I survived the exodus, the only reason I survived that departure, was because a half a dozen of my friends that were working upstairs in the control room ended up hitting the wall before I did. Okay, so technically, I had one heck of a cushion. Okay, now here's the neat thing about the Atlantean Empire. Okay, if you look at the fault lines of the structures in the Bimini Islands, compare those to the fault lines of the support structures when you take a look at a shuttle launch, and you'll find a staggering similarity between them. Now, you have the Atlantean main city, but outside of that, because they had been here for years and years, quite honestly, if I remember correctly, then we were here for a couple of centuries. Okay, and yes, Atlanteans would live a lot longer than humans do, but we had small little satellite cities that had like little outcroppings that were set up outside, but they were powered by the main city. So, of course, when the main city tilted and launched, when this takes place, okay, all of a sudden, all of the connective relays are gone. Now, Atlanteans used crystal computers, which meant that the communication lines were a heck of a sight faster than what we have today. Okay, there was no restriction due to the material it was made out of. But when the main city was torn out of the heart of it, because it was said the cities were out in a circular hub, but they stretched across the Atlantic, across, I believe it was the Atlantic. Okay, they stretched from North America, like from the European sector, all the way into what now is North America and South America. But you got to remember, the whole continental structure has changed over the last several years. Okay, I don't mean just last couple. So you have all of these little, developments. Okay, now the Atlanteans, we are talking about this whole thing taking place way back before some of the other civilizations have taken place. And yes, there was a definitive connection between the Atlantean Empire and what became the Egyptian Empire. And again, much like the Lemurians, some of the Atlanteans that got left behind ended up connecting and merging in with other civilizations. Okay, so will you find all kinds of things floating around? Certainly. Well, I guess technically, Ozzy, the answer would be both. Okay. There was also, they were going through Gibraltar. They already had access to the Bermuda Triangle, to the neat little point outside of, in the Northwest Passage. These were all normal conduits for them. There's a third one, by the way, that if I recall correctly, is somewhere over in either China or in the China. I believe it's in the China Sea. Okay, is another hotspot. Do I have the information as to exactly where? No. I'm just looking at this. Ozzy's going, um, there's pyramids underwater. Yeah. And then Ozzy's going, they found subtropical plants with mammoths. So the climate was definitely different. And that's the whole thing here. Now, the Bermuda Triangle, that's a whole complicated setup. Okay. We'll get to that in a little bit, or at least I hope so. So the Atlantean Empire, when it departed, as a matter of fact, I was talking to a chap that in this lifetime that actually thought he was responsible for the destruction of the Atlantean Empire. He wasn't. Okay. In all fairness, that technology he had been working on worked well enough that we managed to get the superstructure built. Okay. And we managed to get it running properly to get the dome sealed before we lost everything in orbit. Okay. I'll tell you, that was touch and go. But we had to call for help. Okay. So when we sent out a broadband call for help, we were in trouble. And we knew we were in trouble because, now we were off the planet on limited supply. We were cut off from everybody below. And we called out for any help we could get. Way on the other side of the Pleiades was another civilization. Okay, the Corvanians. And yes, these people are being added to Volume 2. Okay, they came in, they came in with help in order to finish stabilizing the energy and figure out what had been done with the Atlantia. Net result, it got repaired. They tore, and people went about their life. On Earth, we have the Empire all of a sudden again ceasing to exist. Okay. Now, this is where the Atlantean civilization just up and collapsed. Okay, but like I said, they are not the same civilization. Okay, they were simply an issue of another civilization that, sad to say, and do understand something very important. I'm going to say something that's going to tick somebody off. Okay, but human greed was absolutely at the backbone of why the Atlantean Empire collapsed. It was pure curiosity on the part of the Lemurians why their civilization ended. But human greed was directly responsible. Human greed and aggression was directly responsible for the collapse of the Atlantean Empire. Okay. And now I've been talking, I don't know, Nathan is probably in the background. Okay, he usually is. As a matter of fact, I saw him in here a little while ago, and I should do this because I do my best to do so. Where are we? That. Let's scrap that down there. And we minimize this so we can actually find it. There we are. And I do have to sit down with Nathan, but this is the link to Nathan's show. Okay, the Quantum Show. Okay. There is the link to it. Drop in, have a listen. If you like what he's doing, do give him a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share the daylights out of it. Okay, but I've got to sit down with Nathan. He was asking me the other day about talking to him about the layout of the crystal computers that they used to use. The Atlanteans were the ones that really had the crystal computers working properly. So I've been starting to do to sort of try and sketch out the way it was laid out. I am not an artist, not by any functional stretch of the imagination. Okay, but I do want to sit down with Nathan at some point because he figures he can possibly mesh it together and at least give an idea. Joe, how you are? No, heavens no, Joe. Greed is a normal thing. Okay, it's a bad thing. The Lemurians had greed way, way, way back, but they figured out how to override it. They figured out. Now, do understand, they were thousands of years in the making, going through greed, going through war, going through jealousy, before they pieced it together. So the fact that mankind is governed by it right now is not anything new. Okay, so the Lemurians went through that themselves, but when we take a look at this, okay, that turn of events was directly tied to the collapse. Okay, so we have the Atlantean Empire that collapsed. It was not connected. It was not part of the Lemurian Empire, although some of the surviving Lemurians did end up connecting with Atlanteans and did end up merging with them. Net result, you did end up with half-breed Lemurian and Atlantean children. Okay, but when the Corvanian arrived, when the Corvanian ship, okay, I believe it was the Janita. I've got that name wrong, but when it showed up, okay, they showed up in orbit. Nobody on Earth, none of the locals could see this happening. Some of them may have seen a star and may have seen a little bit of light in the sky, but they didn't have any communication. and the Covanians didn't come down here to connect, as it were. They came in to pull the Atlantean, the Atlantia out of a degrading orbit. It would not surprise me. I cannot say for certain. Oh, lust is an absolutely terrible thing. Joe is just asking, are there Lemurians under Mount Shasta? I suspect there are. Okay. Now, not all Lemurians are in their original bodies. Okay, because let us remember, reincarnation does happen. Everything I've ever come across, I've yet to find a way to explain some of the things I've seen without it. Okay. Same thing with you get reincarnation, you get walk-ins. So yeah, in my opinion, it's very likely that there are some Lemurians underneath Mount Shasta or underneath other places. Okay, I don't know about Mount Shasta itself specifically. Of course, in all fairness, this lifetime I've never been there. Okay, in all fairness, even though I can ask for travel, and no, I'm not about to prove that to anybody. I've already done the lab rat thing, thanks. Okay, but I have no doubt that there are some that have made their way there. Same as some of the Atlanteans that were left over. Okay, now with the Atlanteans, it was really kind of a neat thing. Okay, because some of the Atlanteans ended up, when you take a look at Europe, Western Africa, some of the Atlanteans merged with the other races, okay, or with the other civilizations, even all the way over in South America, in what became South America, and you have your Mayans and your Aztecs, and yes, I already mentioned that some of the Lemurians made their way there. Same thing, Crystal, how you doing? Glad you could join us. The same thing occurred with the Atlanteans. They made their way there, but here's where things got a little screwy. Okay, when you take a look at Western Europe, at the British Isles, in that whole, I forget what the name of it is, somebody out there undoubtedly knows. Okay. When you take a look in that area, many of the Atlanteans, because there was something the Atlanteans had that humans didn't have, and this is why they could think as fast as they could. Atlanteans had a third lung, okay, which meant they could end up they could get into the water and avoid being trapped, being, if you will, forced by the locals to divulge their secrets. So they moved into the water. Now here's where it gets a little screwy. People have long thought and have long claimed that Atlantis went underwater. Some of the Atlanteans did. And because of that third lung, they developed the ability to actually breathe underwater. And when you combine their introduction there and the other races that already lived there, next thing you know, centuries later, well, really millennia later, you have people that evolved. The Atlanteans ended up developing, in some cases, fins. Okay, their skin took on much more scaled appearance. A lot of that had to do with the salt content, in all fairness. Okay, and all of a sudden, you've got the evolution of what people nowadays call Atlanteans or mermen. Okay, their civilization moved underwater. And of course, we already had the sea elves, the elephant that moved into the seas. Okay, and there were other animals that went back to the seas. There are fossil records that show that whales originally were land dwelling. Well, really, they were originally water dwelling. Got up on land, but as things started to change, they moved back into the water. And now we have whales today. I'm just looking at this. Ozzy's going, Venus is looking like a six-sided star. More like the Walmart logo than the Star of David. chasing the sunset in the west. I haven't actually looked at that side of it. Yeah, you take things like this. These are, Joe's coming up with, Hibernia and Hy-Brasil. These were small communities. Well, compared to Atlanta, to the primary hub, they were. Okay. But we are talking about a lot of what we are finding now are remnants of civilizations that went before mankind. Okay. Now, in case you hadn't noticed, the Roman Empire collapsed also because of greed, also because of control issues. People talk about if you don't know the past, you're doomed to repeat it. Problem is, if you dwell on the past, you've got the same problem. So we've got all of these things going on. Okay. But mankind is now reaching out and starting to go, there's something to this. That would not surprise me at all, Ozzy. Of course, I think in order to look at the sky, I actually have to leave my house. I'm not sure. I think that's the way it works. So I take a look at it. Mankind is finally, thankfully, opening their eyes a lot more. Okay. But if we look back at the Roman Empire, they did it to themselves, and mankind is following the same path at this point. Okay. When you look at the Atlantean Empire, it was an act of terrorism, an act of sabotage that really brought an end to it. When we take a look at some of the other great civilizations that evolved and that subsequently collapsed, sometimes it was natural disaster. Okay, the disaster with Pompeii, that had nothing to do with man's greed. Well, that had little to do with it. Okay, when the Minoan civilization collapsed, again a natural problem that arose. And Henry is just asking, is it possible for modern humans to achieve anything close to the neural connection of Lemurians? The answer there is absolutely as close to 100% yes as I can get. The answer is yeah, they can. Okay. Every single one of you has the capacity to actually make that happen. Okay. You don't need to have a special connection according to mankind. Okay. Like you don't have to become a priest to have that connection. You don't even have to believe in that connection outside of it being solid. You simply have to believe and accept the fact here that it is possible. Okay. Have I, and yeah, Joe's going, Keith, have you seen personally a human being turned into a cryptid right in front of your eyes? Now, that depends on your definition of a cryptid. Okay. Have I personally seen hybrids? Have I personally, like, if you're asking, does a human turn into, like, for instance, the Ogopogo? No. Okay. The Ogopogo is a whole different ballgame. Okay. When you take a look, like, and this is why I say it depends on what you call a cryptid. Okay. Cryptids are not my focus. As in, I haven't done a lot of research into which ones are called what. Okay. So I would have to say no. Not that I'm aware of. I have seen overlays of them where I knew what the person was, and they were a lot of things, but straight human wasn't one of them. Okay. But all of the things I'm talking about here. Now, I've mentioned a number of things that I've done personally. Okay. And I'm going to steal a phrase from long ago, and I know this is going to tick somebody off. Okay. But long ago, as in about 2,000 years, there was a gentleman that made one comment. And I'm going to borrow that comment because it applies. Okay. All that I do, thou shalt do, and more. Meaning everything I've talked about that I have personally done, any one of you has the capacity to do it. Now, Adam's going, being in the Okanagan, have you seen the Ogopogo? I did about 35, 40 years ago. I actually did see the Ogopogo. And that's why when I took one look at it, I went, that, the Ogopogo, in my personal opinion, no, I do not have a photograph. At the time, cameras were barely useful, and they were technology. But in my opinion, the Ogopogo is simply a long-necked plesiosaur. Okay. Now, this does not make it any less intriguing. Okay. But I do know that, and I cannot prove it, somebody else will prove it in about 30, 40 years. But there is connecting water between that connects the Lake Okanagan all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Okay, through underground channels. Now, needless to say, these channels are completely submerged in water. So no, humans are not going to go swimming down there and swim 400 miles underwater. Okay, but from that end, what do we got? Well, that's always fascinating. I mean, I remember when Mount St. Helens blew. There were people living on top of St. Helens too. Not necessarily a good place to live, as it turned out. Same thing here. Ozzy's just saying there's a city of over 1 million people that is half on top of a volcano and half under the water. They're just waiting for it to blow or sink. This is Campi Flegrei. And I hope I didn't pronounce that too terribly wrong. Okay. Oh, I've been through those mountains there in the Rockies. Like Adam's just saying, I have reason to believe there are tunnels deep under the Rocky Mountains where Highway 1 runs through. Okay. And he goes, it could be just my headcanon though. Okay. No, I can tell you wholeheartedly. And from my standpoint, I've seen the tunnels you're talking about. Okay. And yes, there are there are covered gaps in on the surface that can actually get you into those tunnels. Covered as in concealed. But very much those connections are there. Mankind hasn't even begun to understand the world that we're sitting on. But we certainly have no shortage of land. Okay. But all of these things are very much on the real side from everything I've seen. Okay. But what you do have to realize is when I made the comment, well, 2 years ago now, I think, but about 2 years ago, March 6, 2021 was the first the first video I did. Okay. And as I've been saying since way back then, and when we work together, when we focus on the positive side of things, we can make this a better world. Why does that not surprise me, Nathan? By the way, glad to see you popping in again. Mystic, how you doing? Glad you could join us. I hope your day has been going well. Mystic's just gone, Professor, I feel like I've met a previous vessel that you've occupied now that I've seen a different definition video of you. That would not be a shock. Okay, I've met a lot of people that I've known over the centuries. Yeah, when I talk about my life being a little twisted, it really is. Honestly, same thing you would imagine, Adam. They were there for moving back and forth underground, unseen by the war that was going on the surface at the time. Now, do understand, this world does not look like the world that was here when the real battles were taking place. what mankind calls world wars are absolutely mild. Okay, and don't get me wrong, they were heinous, they were horrible things. Okay, but mankind has not seen some of the wars that have taken place. Oh, my sympathies for that one there, Mystic. It's when you like Mother's Day, like I end up with an interesting setup. Every few years, my birthday falls on Mother's Day because my birthday was on Saturday. Mother's Day was yesterday. And that is an excellent point. I really should have thought about that to start with. But thanks so much, Mystic and Nathan, for bringing this to my attention. To all of you women out there, all of you mothers, okay? And rest assured, if you're a mother or you're a grandmother or whatever, to all of you, happy Mother's Day. Okay, I do hope it went well for you. I know some of you had some rough runs. Okay, and for that, I do feel for you. Not that I can do a lot about it. Okay, but maybe, just maybe, if we work together, we can make things turn around a little better. A little better for everybody. Thank you so much for that, Ozzy. Quite seriously, I just literally on Saturday hit 60 years old. Okay. Now the grade that I've got. Sorry, I've been doing that since I was 16. Okay, but there's a lot of change happening right now, and a lot of things that are actually moving in the right direction. But take a look at what your day has been going like. Take a look at the way your life has gone to this point. I strongly encourage you to do what I'm in the process of doing. And I wrote it. That's why I couldn't find it. Okay. Yesterday, I sat down and worked out a schedule so that when I get up in the morning, I know exactly what I'm working on. Okay. Starting at getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Where are we? Getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and being on the go until somewhere between 10 o'clock at night, midnight. Okay, depending. I'm not looking at getting 8 hours of sleep. The odds of that happening are not good. Okay, but while I've got that on the go, okay, first and foremost, where are we here? Oh, really? Holy mackerel, is today ever going by in a hurry? I've been working on a number of different things, but these two sheets here, okay, that was done in an hour. Okay, and that is these two sheets are the backbone of a new self-help book that I'm in the process of putting together and should have completed by the end of the month. Okay, and yes, the priorities are still the Yldrbac Chronicles and the release of the second printing of Races of the Worlds. At last check, which by the way was last night, I was sitting with Races of the Worlds. It's gone from a 64-page book to an 85-page book. And I've only just begun to get through it. Okay, so and a lot of the information I talk about is actually being added to these different places, to the different races, including pictures of all 59 races, at least to the best of our ability. Okay, but I've got that on the go. I'll be working on more of that today. Okay, and this little critter here, I like the figures, right? Because this guy here is in the new series that I'm writing. Okay, and like I didn't finish the other ones yet, but I figured what the heck, might as well start another one. My brain, for some reason, does not slow down much. The Race of the Worlds, Nathan, and this honestly is the same thing for other people for people, but I do have the pictures. I've got to go through and make sure I've got everything set up right. But all of the races, and when I said I'm doing a second printing, okay, the second printing has the pictures of all 59 races. I did not add any new races to it. Okay. Patricia, how you doing? Glad you could join us. You know, the nice part of, as a matter of fact, why don't I look at that? We are currently sitting, and of course, I'm looking at this now. I really should say something about it, I suspect. If you haven't done so already, if you enjoy this stream, do me a favor and give us a thumbs up, and then subscribe to the channel and share the daylights out of it. You know, I've gone past the idea of going, let's keep the show going, to let's this year. I'd love to see it come to 1,000 subscriptions. That's when YouTube turns around and says, okay, now here's a tiny little bit of money for doing the work. But it came to my attention that we have billions of people listening to somebody stand in front of crowds and go, the world's going to end. We're all going to die. Panic, scream. You're going to starve to death. No, the world will end in probably a few trillion years. Okay. Now, in all fairness, this is where my lack of research throws me into a bit of a loop. Okay, where are we here? Go back up to what was Ozzy looking at here? Oh, Ozzy's just made a comment like Darren Kuyu in Turkey. I'm presuming this is in Darren Kuyu. There are tunnels underneath the mountains there as well. I know there are, same as in Switzerland. This world is riddled with a tunnel network that is just absolutely bizarre. Okay, the other thing you have to remember is when you take a look at the Egyptian hieroglyphs, they weren't just a language. They were also a circuit board. Okay, they were literally laid out to pass energy. And I know that sounds completely backwards. Okay, I understand that. And in 30 or 40 years, they'll come up with the proof for you. Until then, you'll have to deal with it. You do the research. Okay. It's kind of like the other thing that, I'm not debating the alignment of Stonehenge. Okay. But I will tell you it had another purpose that very few people even look at. And that is the fact that it was a landing pad for ships that did not have proper landing capacity. Okay. This is where of course, the orientation of it has all been proven. They've done all the research. I will tell you, I look at this, and I appreciate that, Mystic. I was talking to somebody the other day, and it was priceless what they said. I was talking to them. What do we got? Yeah, I was talking to the guy, and I said, look, I says, never mind all the research you've done. Never mind everything that's written. I've seen the thing. Okay, I've been off this planet. I've had, and no, I don't have proof for you. Sorry. Take my word for it or don't. I'm not here to prove it. Okay, but I will tell you, yes, when we take a look at the planets, okay, you got to remember the sun is not stationary. The planets do revolve around it, don't get me wrong. And it's not technically round. But I'll tell you, trying to build a pear-shaped planet and show you the globe, show you the world, is a little complicated. Okay. Yeah, there's a neat little problem there, Henry. If you're living with what people call a flat earther, okay, there's a very simple rule of thumb. For those that believe, no proof is possible. Or, sorry, for those that believe the earth is flat, no proof is possible. For those that don't believe it, no proof is necessary. The same thing applies to the world, to whether the world is a globe or whether aliens are here. When somebody believes something, proof to the contrary may well be impossible. If they already believe it, you don't have to prove it. Okay, but the thing I was getting at when I said that this guy was absolutely, it was priceless. He looks at me and goes, he says, there's thousands of people I know around the globe that believe the world is flat. He says, the Flat Earth Society has thousands of people around the globe. I looked at him, I went, how is that even a possible thought process? Okay, but that being said, I'm not here to prove it one way or the other. I know I'm not afraid of walking off the end of the world. Ozzy, it is absolutely somewhat hollow. There is a complete other set of continents underneath the surface of the earth. Okay, there is a complete civilization below the silt belt in the Marianas Trench. So yes, there is a lot on this world that has not been proven yet. Ozzy's just saying, where are we here? I also heard somebody tell me it was shaped like a donut. And I'm thinking, okay, well, if it's shaped like the donut, we need the coffee as well. But, yeah, is it shaped like a hockey puck? Not from my experience. Although I can understand why a Canadian may think of it that way. Well, that's just it, Ozzy. People that believe the world is flat, there is no way you're going to explain it. And am I going to get into a debate with people over it? Not a snowball's prayer. So absolutely, my opinion is you're welcome to your own opinion, because all the scientific research in the world isn't going to do a thing for my belief. Okay. I've already been out there. I've already seen it. And I don't even need you to believe that one. Okay. But when we take a look at it, everything that we talk about, the possibility, there's an old saying that goes, truth is stranger than fiction. Somebody wrote something. Oh, there it is. Let us just see what we got here. I got to change sites here for half a second just to see what was put here. Where are we? Ah. Oh, thank you so much, Joe. I don't think Joe's in, but this is the same Joe. I just had a Joe send me a picture and send me a short little video. You find this interesting. What do we got? He should have sent me a video. Oh, yeah. Well, Joe just sent me a video that, Joe just sent me a video, and I don't think it's Joe. Oh, that is you. Okay. Thank you so much, Joe. I just looked at it. Absolutely agree with you. Okay. Joe sent me a video here. Let's just take a look at what was said here. I know you're not asking for this. Okay, but can I verify whether it's real? Whether the video's been doctored or not? No. I can tell you that my first instinct says, yeah, that showed something phasing up through the ground. Okay. I'd love to hear what you find out if you're getting it analyzed. Okay. But yeah, I just noticed it. So I mean, it says here you sent it half an hour ago. I'm glad I got a chance to take a look at it first. But yeah, that looks like what's happened is that and whatever that is, I didn't get a chance to look at it a lot, but it does look like something was just out of sync Whether you want to call it cloaked or whether you want to call it phased, doesn't matter. Call it what you will. Does it look like something came out of the ground and crossed across in front of that video? The answer is absolutely yes. It does appear to be real, but I am no video analyst. Okay, what do we got going on here? Yeah, I don't doubt that. Yeah, I wouldn't even consider thinking, I would not even consider thinking that you personally had done anything to it. Okay. From my standpoint, all I can tell you is what it looks like there is I've seen that before, just not at your place. Okay, what do we got here? Oh, now I don't know where mudflood is, but Tartaria, I believe it must have been you that asked about that a while ago. Tartaria is an interesting place. As far as my lifetime there. But that's one that where are we here? That's one that we are going to have to come back to look at. But it is amazing some of what is out there. This is why I say, do not count out the degradation of some stuff. There's an old saying that says the truth is stranger than fiction. Now, the fact of the matter is most things can be explained, but you do have to let go of the idea that it necessarily has to fit in our current life, in our current understanding of physics. Yeah, I'm looking at this. Ozygos Tartaria is just a name that's been hijacked. They propose that the modern Kazakh area was a super civilization that built a lot of the buildings around the world. Okay. See, I haven't looked into a lot of the research that's being out there, or a lot of what's being popped around. I don't even have a TikTok account, and from what I gather, not exactly a loss. Okay, but I've got enough on the go as far as that goes. But I will tell you, when people talk about Earth being overpopulated right now, it's not even close to overpopulated. But what is in danger of happening is civilization buckling because of greed. I was Aussie. Okay, and I have to actually take a look at that. Where are we here? See, this week, just to be clear before we run out here, because you can feel my throat starting to seize. That's just because I've been going at this for 2 hours straight. And that's pretty much where I start to run into hiccups. Tomorrow we will be tomorrow on the 15th, we'll be looking at the do's and don'ts of having explicit dreams. And no, it's not going to get into the real wrong area there. On Tuesday, we're going to look at Ouija. On Wednesday, we've got it listed for what's on Wednesday? Oh, the deep sea humanoids. Thursday, of course, is a write-off. And then on Friday, on the 19th, we're going to look at the issue of living with PTSD, whatever form it is taken, looking at some of the ways to cope with it. Okay, now I'm starting to put a list together for, to take a look at more and more topics down the road. Okay, because right now, and this was what I had actually asked for, so thank you guys very much for that. Okay, I'm looking at the issue of having things booked so I know where I'm standing. Okay. But I don't want to get so far ahead of myself, and this is why I'm watching what I'm doing. And it's not a question of one topic being more important than the next or not. It's a question of there is so many different topics that people really require understanding of. And there's things that I know I've been told I've got to bridge the gap on. Because on top of what this world is doing right now, we have to start really looking for a way to find a happy way of living in this world together. Yeah, I don't, Joe's just saying, just a quick tip. Put an SD card in your trap camera and let it do its magic. Doesn't matter where you live, you will catch something. Absolutely agree with you. Of course, I know what I think I know what an SD card is. Me and tech, not going to happen. But I'll tell you, I got no problem looking at the videos. I cannot tell you whether they're real. Okay, I can tell you whether they seem to represent what is going on. Okay, but I'm no video analyst. And the best I can tell you is there is not a prayer unless I get absolutely directly asked by somebody. I'm not about to lie to you guys to any one of you to make you feel better. Okay. So with that in mind, I have changed a whole pile of things around. I will put it to you this way. Am I open to doing consulting again? The answer is yes. Okay. And if you're looking at that side of it or anything else for that matter, where, pray tell, did I put that funny little sheet? Here we are. And below this video, below every one of my videos, you'll find a number of ways of contacting me. But this here is the most active email that I've got where it comes to getting in touch with me. Okay. Where are we? This one right here. And then, of course, this here is the website that's got, right now, has all of my books listed on it. Okay, so I am working on a number of things at the same time here. But there you have it. Now, with that in mind, we're just hitting the 2-hour mark here. And since my throat is starting to seize, I don't doubt that at all there, Joe. By the way, Joe, thank you so much for that video. I really do appreciate it. You certainly have something going on there from my end. But I should be back on a little later tonight. I just need to give my throat a little bit of a break and grab a bite to eat. But that being said, I will let you go. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me, and I really do look forward to talking to you again. Until then, okay, do take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.